There's a place in the heart of the Pacific Northwest, a place so ancient, so eerie, that even the locals avoid speaking of it. It's a stretch of forest called Whispering Pines. The name sounds serene, almost inviting. But let me assure you, this forest is no peaceful retreat. It's a place where the lost become part of the earth, where the trees themselves seem to whisper, and where every shadow hides something waiting for the right moment to strike. The year was 2023, and 4 friends made a fateful decision to visit this cursed land. They thought they were ready. They thought they could handle the wild. But no one can handle what lies waiting for them in those woods. Their names were Jack, Sam, Megan, and Tom. They were close friends, connected by shared memories of hunting, adventures, and a thirst for the unknown. Jack was the leader of the group. He'd served in the military, his life marked by the scars of battles fought far from home. He had come to see the world in shades of gray, with little room for fantasy or fear. Sam was the rational one. Science and logic were his guiding principles. He had little tolerance for the supernatural. Then there was Megan, the thrill seeker. A photographer, she saw the world through a lens, capturing the beauty and danger of nature with her camera. And lastly, there was Tom, the youngest of the group, eager to prove himself. He was new to the wild, but his excitement often made him the most eager to venture into places where others feared to tread. Their story begins on a cool autumn morning. They piled into Jack's truck, their backpacks loaded with gear and supplies. Their destination? Whispering Pines, a secluded area deep in the forest known for its untouched beauty. The forest had a reputation among the locals, a reputation for being dangerous, even cursed. But the 4 friends, brimming with confidence, shrugged off the warnings. They were seasoned hunters, adventurers, and thrill seekers. What could go wrong? The forest was a place of beauty at first. The towering pines stretched endlessly toward the sky, their needles rustling in the breeze. The ground was soft underfoot, covered in a carpet of moss and fallen leaves. Birds chirped in the distance, and the air smelled of earth and pine resin. As they trekked deeper into the woods, the laughter of the group echoed, carefree and loud. But something was wrong. The deeper they went, the quieter the world became. The chirping of the birds faded, and the rustling leaves grew hushed, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Even the wind seemed to disappear. By the time they set up camp by the edge of a small stream, the air had grown colder. The sky above, once clear and blue, had darkened. Jack didn't mention it, but he could feel something shifting in the air. A tension that couldn't be explained. Something was watching them. The campfire crackled in the silence, its flames the only light in the darkness. They sat around it, chatting, sharing stories, trying to ignore the uncomfortable stillness of the woods around them. As night fell, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, barely audible, like the rustling of dry leaves in the wind. But they didn't stop. They came from all directions, as if the trees themselves were speaking. Tom, the youngest, was the first to hear it clearly. A soft, almost imperceptible voice whispering his name. Tom, Tom. He looked around, his heart pounding in his chest, but saw nothing. He dismissed it as a trick of the wind. He had to. To acknowledge it would mean confronting a fear he wasn't ready to face. But the others heard it too. First, Megan, then Sam, and finally Jack. They all heard the whispers, and though none of them spoke of it, the fear in their eyes was undeniable. Jack tried to reassure them. "It's just the wind," he said, but even his voice trembled. That night, sleep came reluctantly, if at all. The fire had burned down to embers, and the forest around them seemed to press in. Every crack of a branch, Every snap of a twig made their hearts jump, but the whispers never stopped. They seemed to circle around them, always just beyond their comprehension. Sometimes they thought they heard words, names, perhaps, or maybe something more sinister. Sam tried to reason with them. "It's just the forest," he said. "Old woods, filled with strange sounds. Nothing more." But something wasn't right. Jack woke in the middle of the night, the whispers louder than ever. He heard something else now, something closer. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breaths, just outside the edge of the firelight. He grabbed his rifle, stepping cautiously into the darkness. But when he reached the edge of the camp, there was nothing there. Just trees. Silent trees. The next morning, they decided to continue their hunt. But things only grew worse. The deeper they went into the forest, the stranger the events became. The trees, once tall and proud, now seemed to bend unnaturally, leaning toward them, as if the forest was alive and watching. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift, making the path feel unfamiliar. They couldn't tell where they were. The trail had vanished. Then, they found something that shouldn't have been there. At the center of a clearing, they discovered an old hunting knife buried in the dirt. The handle was worn, covered in rust. The initials RM were carved into the wood. Tom, always curious, picked it up. He turned it over in his hands, examining it closely. "It looks old," he said. But when he looked up, the others were staring at something else. In the distance, something moved. A shadow among the trees. It was tall, far too tall to be a person, and it was watching them. Jack raised his rifle, his fingers trembling on the trigger. But the shadow didn't approach. It simply stood there, silent, motionless. And then, the whispers started again. But this time, they were louder, more insistent. The voices were no longer just in the wind. They were all around them. "Leave. Leave now. Leave or die." The words echoed in their minds, leaving no room for doubt. This was no ordinary forest. It was alive, and it wanted them gone. They tried to leave, but the forest wouldn't let them. No matter how they ran, no matter which direction they took, the path led them back to the clearing. The shadows were everywhere now, eyes glowing faintly in the dark, watching their every move. The forest seemed to close in on them. The whispers turned into growls, then screams. Megan was the first to scream, her voice echoing through the trees. "Help!" she cried. But it was no use. The forest had claimed her. One by one, they vanished. Jack, Sam, and Tom. Each of them was taken by the forest. The trees closed around them, and the whispers carried them away. When the authorities arrived days later, they found nothing but empty campsites, a few scattered belongings, and a knife buried in the ground with the same initials. RM, no trace of the group was ever found. It's as if the forest had swallowed them whole. And so, Whispering Pines remains, a place where the lost become one with the earth, a place where the forest whispers, and where something older than time itself waits patiently for its next prey. So, the next time you hear a whisper in the woods, remember this tale. Listen carefully, and know that sometimes the forest answers back.
Thank you for watching this episode from The Lures of the Past. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and intrigue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our next tale from the past goes live.